Lord, yes, papi, hit me one time and make it funky.
I was brought up with all that had no bed. I was brought up with all that had no bed. I was brought up with all that had no bed.
Welcome to the Full Circle Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, David Roberts, along with the OG Dr. Neil Holmes and the oral historian, Andre Taylor. Today, we have three special guests in the building. I'll give them a brief introduction and I'll allow them to say a little bit about themselves. We have Kevin Murray with the Murray Law Firm. And if I mess that up, you can correct me.
No, you're good.
We have Andrea Odom of the Odom Consulting Group. And we have Leo Ohaebosim, lawyer or former lawyer and someone who has ventured into movie production. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Hey, Kevin, let's start with you. We recently reconnected and you had advised me that you had gotten into the movie production business, executive producing of movies. So I definitely want to talk about that. But since you have the law background and, you know, we recently, when we first connected, we were talking about the Kyle Rittenhouse case and the Ahmaud Arbery case. And I wanted to get your take on that. Then just come to find out as we were chatting before we started this podcast that Andrea was involved with that. So Kevin, why don't we start with you? What was your take on, let's say, the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict and the Ahmaud Arbery verdict?
Now, first, Kyle Rittenhouse, that was very disturbing, to be honest. I don't know if I could put into words adequately how this young man could walk through these crowds, carrying this automatic weapon, using this automatic weapon, killing individuals, wounding, maiming others, and then a jury, 12 jurors saw this and then said, you know what? His actions were within the bounds of a civilized society. That's just very hard to take. So other than that, I don't know what is to say. I know there's some people say, oh, I expected it. You know, what else do you expect to happen? But I can't be that cynical. It's hard for me to be that cynical about this. I just can't understand it. I can't understand it. And then I heard even some people were like, you know, I stay out of their business. They're killing their own. You know, I can't take that position as well because I'm like, we're all citizens.
Right.
You know, if you look historically, we come by our citizenship in different ways, clearly. But we're all citizens. We're all citizens of the United States, and no citizen should be treated this way. You know what I mean? And that's my thought about Kyle Rittenhouse. Now with Ahmaud, it's gratifying the end, but if you look at the story, you can see how it could have come to a very different end. You know what I mean? The first prosecutor, how she was friends with the gentleman. You know what I mean? How I think even the second prosecutor, I think he wrote a couple letters saying, don't prosecute this case. You know what I mean? It could have come to the very same end if it wasn't for the video. Now, Andrea was there on the ground. She could probably tell you a little bit. I'm sure she could tell you a lot more about that. But from my position, I'm like, man, this is America. This is 2021. Why does it take the video of someone being executed for it to be believed? Right. I mean, at no point. And then if you hear the testimonies, gentlemen, they were just like, yeah, I did it. You know, they were just very like unapologetic. They're like, because that's, you know, what I thought he was not saying, but he was saying is that that's what we do. That's what we do to these people down there. That's the way I take it, because there was from my perspective, didn't seem like there was remorse, or there was like, you know, even a conscious thought that, hey, you know, maybe I did something wrong.
Right. And I took it like they probably felt like they were going to get away with it. And that's why they could be so indignant, because history has shown that, you know, because I thought of the Trayvon Martin case. I thought that was open and shut, you know, like I thought he stalked this young man and then he ended up killing him. So when he was found not guilty, not only was I surprised at that verdict, but just the reaction of the general public when they found out that Trayvon Martin was going to his father's, coming from his father's house and going to the store and all of that, and he was completely innocent, there was still no sympathy for this child. And I want to repeat that he was a child. There was no sympathy for him. In fact, when those young people shot up all of their classmates at Columbine, there was more sympathy for the shooters in that instance than there was for Trayvon Martin. So that's, I think that's why these guys were so indignant. Now, Andrea, you were involved in the case. How so?
I was. So I do all of the media management and the press for the family, for Ahmaud's mother, and for one of the attorneys that is involved in the civil trial, Attorney Lee Merritt. And so what I found, well, let me first give my opinion on the Kyle Rittenhouse. I was not surprised. And I will flip that over with the Ahmaud Arbery verdict, where I also was not surprised because I was there. The amazing thing about this trial that I don't think the average person saw, unless you either watched the gavel to gavel coverage or you were in the courtroom, these men, their own words and their own tale of what they did ended up coming back to haunt them. They just kept their mouth shut, but they almost bragged about what they did. In a synopsis nutshell, if you didn't watch the coverage, the McMichaels father and son, McMichaels was working on his porch, minding his own business. He sees a black man running down the street. He stops what he's doing. He goes inside. He grabs his shotgun. He tells his son, who is upstairs, hey, grab your rifle. Let's go. They hop into the truck. They go down the street. The other guy, Roddy Bryant, in his garage, minding his business. He sees a pickup truck and a black man. Nobody called him. He decides, let me jump in the car and let me grab and make chase as well. They use phrases like, we cornered him like a rat. That asshole had it coming. Even after he was dead on the ground, they said, he did something. You guys should go canvass the neighbors and find out what it was that he did. And so just to hear all of that come together, there was no other way that this jury could have come to the conclusion that they did, albeit we're talking 11 white people and one black man. So I think it speaks to where this country finally is, hopefully, as a turning point for this generation, really post George Floyd.
Now, as I understand it, they said he had gone to an unfinished house or something like that, and that was his concern? Okay.
Yes, and I will say the prosecution did an amazing job of continuing to say, as Mr. Arbery entered the unsecured open construction site, she kept saying, unsecured open construction site. And I don't know about y'all, but when I was building my house, I can't tell you how many times I walked in, looked around. I want to see the finishes. I want to see the floor plan. That is a common occurrence. Now, he did go in there frequently to see the progress. He had an interest in architecture and construction. There was also a white couple that came in there that was seen leaving with a bag. They were later to found out that they were homeless, living under a bridge. It was said by the owner, Larry English, to the entire neighborhood group chat, oh no, this guy's never taken anything. He's just a nuisance. So when they set out to chase him, they knew he didn't take anything. They knew that he was not a suspect of a robbery, but they claimed that they were doing a citizen's arrest, although they never said, we're seizing you for this reason. You're under arrest for this reason. And of course, now we know that citizen's arrest law has since been repealed, which I think is phenomenal that it all came about as a result of this case.
And what's interesting, I've lived in an unfinished subdivision before. And in fact, they're building a house 2 lots down from me. If someone walks into that unfinished house, I really don't care that much. I mean, it's really not something I'm going to jump off my porch and go running down the street to chase somebody.
Yep.
If it's a contractor or something, and if it's somebody just looking around, that's really nothing that would concern me. So,
but the difference is there were 2 young white boys living in the neighborhood, and they came over and were throwing rocks and doing this, and they were dismissed as blowing off steam. the white homeless couple, they were dismissed as just being curious. But when Ahmaud Arbery came into the site, he was assigned as the person who was responsible for all the thefts in the neighborhood. And he was targeted. He was targeted so much so that during the 911 call, Travis McMichael said, it all started when I saw a black man running down the street. They said, what was your emergency? He said, there's a black man running down the street. That tells you, that's an open and shut. That tells you everything you need to know about the case.
That's it. That was the emergency right there.
That was the emergency.
That was the wrong.
Yep.
And that's probably
Absolutely.
That's probably why I'm assuming they didn't send anybody out. 911 didn't send anybody out because that's all they had.
They did. They did, but by the time they did, he had already run past and was making his lap around the neighborhood. And I lost count. The McMichaels and people in the neighborhood called 911 on Ahmaud Arbery about 10 times.
Wow.
So it was targeted. I mean, it came out in the testimony.
Now, Leo, I know you weren't directly involved, but you still have that law background. I want to hear your input as well.
Much like what Kevin said, I mean, starting with the Rittenhouse case, the one thing I would add is the fact that you had somebody with intent take a weapon into a situation like this. No, and you can't turn around and say, okay, well, I had it, it was just for my protection. And then a lot of things that, didn't get into the trial that we got to see outside. The fact that, there was a videotape of him speaking disparagingly about some African-Americans when they were at a restaurant, and, how he wanted to kill them, that type of thing, So if you looked at the lead up, at least with it helps for investigative purposes, even though it may not be admissible in court. And, the jury didn't get to hear that, but we got to see that, look, this person really, prior to going, had the intent of doing some form of harm. He was going to wound or kill someone. There's no issue about that. So, for, it to come back around and he's just like, okay, well, he's not guilty. He is guilty. He had the requisite intent. He had the means to go ahead and accomplish it, and it happened. But, again, like Kevin said, the jury didn't see that. So that was quite shocking, to me. I know there was a lot of legal wrangling and certain things that they tried to get in that they weren't able to get in, and things the jury truly didn't get a chance to see. And I understand that you can only judge, the facts that are presented before you. But again, this whole thing after the fact to make it look like, no, this guy, was, all-American young man, just there with a gun, happened to use it to protect himself. That narrative, after the fact becomes gospel, and that really wasn't the truth. After these people lost their lives and people were wounded. And then
let me ask you, what do you make of the fact that the judge removed the possession of a weapon? How, again, not being the legal background that I don't have, how in the world is that even allowed to happen?
Yeah, I'll defer to you on that. In terms of
Somebody
the
make it make
removal of
sense.
the removal. Well, okay, let me start. There's a rule that they have, I believe it's Rule 50, that basically says that the judge is the king in his court. And that's that they're allowed to go ahead and rule like that. And then they're just, to budget that, there's appeals processes and things like that. And you can actually appeal certain things as a trial is going on. To answer your question, I don't know why he did that. And I don't know, what brought him to do it, but it was definitely huge in doing it. So.
Yeah. Now you're asking about the charge regarding the possession of the weapon?
Because they excluded the picture and dropped that charge.
I think, because I have to look at it again, but I think he was legally in possession of it, and because he crossed state lines, right? Correctly. I think they were saying that at the end of the day, he was not in violation of the law. Like I said, it's very hard to believe.
Right, I agree with you. I think the issue was the fact that as he crossed state lines, he didn't cross it with I think purchased the gun in the state or acquired the gun in the state. That was where that was a sticking point, was how the gun came in. I believe the judge's rationale was, had the gun come across state lines, then it would have been illegal. But because he purchased it legally in the state, that there was no violation there. And again, I think that's splitting hairs. I wouldn't vote like that. But
Yeah, because he was 17, and I know his mom had some involvement, and I think this is progress that we see that the Michigan school shooting parents are now, being brought to the table. So hopefully that's the direction that we're going to be heading in with this kind of thing with parents.
Actually, the parents have to take some responsibility.
Absolutely.
Have these underage children, because that's what they are, with weapons. Doesn't even make sense. Deadly weapons. Doesn't make sense. Does not make sense.
And
One thing Kevin said concerned me, and he said that some people believe that because Rittenhouse had killed 2 other whites and wounded another white, then hey, but those 3 whites were all supporters and allies of Black folks.
Yep.
And one thing that came to my mind was that, at the end of Reconstruction, when lynching began in a big way, if you look at the first 10 years where that lynching kind of blew up, the first 5 years of it, the majority of the victims of the lynching were white. And that is that those people who were trying to keep Black folks down were first trying to break off any white allies from that process, in that thing, and try to isolate Black folks alone. So that's one concern. Now, I don't know if my question here, I also have a question, this question of white fear of Black men, Black people. And I don't know if you remember the case in the 80s or 90s, the kid on the train in New York. You had these 5 brothers come through, and they were, harassing people. And I think his name was Berkowitz or something.
Bernard Getz.
Huh? Yeah, Bernard Getz. Do you see that? Do you see a line here, a similarity between Getz and Rittenhouse in terms of this white fear thing?
Yep.
How do we defeat it?
Yep. And there's Trial by Media, actually is on Netflix. You guys check it out. I actually just was brought up to speed, Professor, about that case. And it is absolutely fascinating, the polarization of the community behind that case. You had 50% of the community who was in support of that man defending himself, like Kyle Rittenhouse, and then the Black community who was saying that those Black boys did not deserve that treatment.
Yeah. And if you ask how I don't know if it's resolve it or address it or what, I don't know, to be honest, because you can't, when race is weaponized by someone outside of that race, I don't know how I as a Black man can resolve that for them. You know what I mean? I can't make them comfortable. I can't make them, when you weaponize the color of my skin, I can't make you comfortable. And I can try to educate you. You know what I mean? We can have discussions, but our world has become so polarized, and everyone lives in these silos now. And if even if you on Facebook, you get more back of what you look at. You know what I'm saying? So if you look at these, these disturbing images about Black people, you're gonna get more of that. You get more of those stories. So we live in these silos, we live in these buckets. So I don't know how it occurs. And then and not to disparage, the right or the left, but I just read the other day where Chris Wallace is leaving Fox News because he's like, even I can't stand this. You know what I mean? They're moving so far to the right and with conspiracy theories and all of this. Chris Wallace is moving to CNN Plus. You know what I mean? So with that being said, with them having these foothold in these people's homes and more importantly their minds, I don't know how it ever gets resolved.
Well, what's interesting, as we've been having this discussion, I've been thinking what Andrea does might be even more important than what lawyers do. No disrespect, fellas. When it comes to these cases.
Always kowtown to the ladies, dude. Huh?
Right? Haven't changed.
Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed.
But it seemed like it's about creating and controlling a narrative, And I remember when Colin Kaepernick was kneeling, and he said he was kneeling to protest police brutality of Black men. He never said anything about the military. Nothing. He said nothing about the military. But then people that didn't like his message, knew that the military was sacred to some people. So they said, okay, he's disrespecting, the military and the people that fight. And then that got, a lot of people to turn against, what he was protesting. So it just seems like, controlling the narrative is just such a big thing. I see why Andrea has a role. I see, why people would say we need to hire this group, because that seems to be more important, controlling that narrative than the facts in many cases.
Here's what I'll say though. So you can attempt to control the narrative. Two things. I get so tired of people saying when somebody says Black Lives Matter or police killing Black men, it's normally white people that say, hey, let's keep politics out of this. Since when did race become politics? I get so tired of hearing that, because it's not a political issue. It's an issue of justice and equality. Right. Secondarily, I wish I could give myself as much credit for controlling the narrative. This country has reached a flashpoint where there are certain cases that are going to be thrust into the national spotlight. The Ahmaud Arbery case was just one of those cases. I assisted in managing it. However, the firm that I represent has 67 civil rights cases with people being killed by the police across the country, 19 in Texas, probably 3 of which you've heard. So unfortunately, it has become so commonplace that Black people fall at the hands of the police that it's not newsworthy until you have a case that catapults itself into the national spotlight. I wish I could do more and amplify every single one of these cases, and the interest is just not there.
Right. So for me, that was part of the reason that I left journalism. I was a crime reporter for 15 years, and my last stop was in Greensboro. There was a woman who was a gun advocate, she was anti-violence and anti-gun violence, and that was her demise. She was shot and killed. They shot her at a party, pushed her body out in front of the emergency room, sped off. I wrote the story, and I mean, we pulled background to understand who people are. And I saw that she had an arrest about maybe 6-7 years before she was shot. And it was less than a roach of marijuana that she got popped for. I know what I wrote, and something told me that night before, send yourself a copy of this. The next day I wake up, there's all these phone calls and emails, and it's her daughter and her mom. And I listened to one of the messages, why'd you have to call my mom a crackhead? Call me back. I didn't call your mom a crack. I didn't even put that in about that, because it wasn't substantial enough to say she did 20 years for murder. It wasn't any of that. But it was enough to sensationalize it enough that when it hit the website, people were going to click on it because of certain things that were in there. So I mean, it's the media has a way. We're talking about controlling narratives. That's what I do. I'm in history now. I spent time in journalism, so I'm versed in narratives. And if it's one of those things that's going to get clicks, if it's going to sensationalize, if it's going to further entrench us in this hole that we're in, they're all for it, But nobody talks about the kid that's going to school on a scholarship, and we're not talking about those kind of stories because it's nothing to write about. And the one flashpoint that I've always seen in the newsroom, don't ever talk about the flag. As soon as you say, oh, the flag, everybody is up in arms. Oh, USA, USA. And it's just like, understand that that's ultimately, and Dr. Holmes, you and I don't know if we see eye to eye on this one, but to me, that's nationalism. Flags are what you use to identify your country, and they don't have any real standing. I mean, everybody got a flag. Hell, I got a flag that I'm making right now. But that don't mean that we're going to stand up for anything. And, it's funny to see, living down this part of Virginia, enough of the stickers on the back of cars, we the people. And I got into a debate with a guy, and, I saw his hat, and it's we the people on the front, and it said since 1776 on the side. And I looked, and he said, what's wrong? I said, your hat's inaccurate. And he said, what do you mean? I said, it should say we the rich white men since 1776. It doesn't, no, it's we the people. No, sir, no, because even white women weren't allowed to vote until 1900. So, I mean, it was we the rich white men. And you see them get all up in arms about this. And it's funny to see white women, on the front, USA, we the people. And it's like, we never meant you. You were still property then. So, but it fits that white narrative. You know, you can say what you want, do what you want, because you're covered under that we the people. You know, so I'm sick and tired of it. So leaving the media to go to history was safer, is more fun, and it seems like it's more of an impact.
Well, I definitely want to talk about media some more, because we're going to talk about film, the film industry. But before we transition into that, Andrea shared some news with us again when we were just chatting before we, started the podcast this evening about Derrick Shobin, the Derrick Shobin case, which I didn't know. Andrea, could you share that with us?
Yes, today in the civil trial, Derrick Shobin actually pled guilty, which I was very surprised at, violating George Floyd's civil rights. And I believe, I don't know the exact verbiage, maybe unlawfully detaining him. And so, again, I hope that these small victories will set a precedent and will show people in the law enforcement community. Of course, we don't say all bad cops are bad, but the bad apples, that when you act with malicious and nefarious intent, that you will be brought to justice and you will be brought to light. There's another case in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, Ronald Green, that received a little bit of national attention, but it's not a household name. It's not a George Floyd. It's not a Breonna Taylor. He was running from the police. He was scared for his life. He had a car accident. The police subsequently pulled him out and beat him to death, put him back in the car, and told his family he died of a car accident. Until the cover-up came through and until the Louisiana State Police got called to the carpet. So it's just so common that the police and the prosecutors, as you guys mentioned with Jackie Johnson, the Ahmaud Arbery case, that everybody circles rank to protect the system. Mm-hmm. So it's not until we find a crack in the system and can hold these people accountable, like I think Derrick Shobin did today, that we will be able to see any real change.
And that's a perfect transition to talking about the films that Leo and Kevin are working with. Leo has totally transitioned to film, and Kevin, I know you're still working in law, but in River Runs Red, the movie that you two were both involved in 2018, that's exactly what that movie addressed. That protection of the system. Even and for those watching us, if you haven't seen River Runs Dead, you should check it out. I got it. I watched it today on demand. I think it's on Peacock. You should take a look. Taye Diggs, George Lopez. Even in this movie, the black mayor told a black judge whose son was killed, "Hey man, this is bigger than me." He's like, this is bigger than me. We can offer you this check. He didn't even have to go to a civil suit. The mayor offered him a check, but of course, the judge turned it down. So Leo, why don't we start with you? What got you involved with this film?
Oh, myself and my production partner, Wes Miller, who he's the writer director. So we formed this company called Sweet Unknown Studios. And, I'm on the business side, he's on the technical side, but we had actually practiced law together for 8 years, criminal and civil defense, civil and criminal defense. I'd wanted to go and, represent athletes, and he had wanted to do stuff with directing. So we went to lunch one day and realized we both kind of had the same type of goals. And we're like, look, this is what we want to do. And we went in that direction. So he writes predominantly the majority of the scripts. And when he put together River Runs Red, it was 2 years before anything had happened with George Floyd. It came out, it happened to be timely, but we had been doing research. It's interesting, Andrea brought up these numbers about how the people have become so desensitized. There's about 1,000 of these shootings every year. 1,000 of these police-involved shootings, of which you have over 60% involve African-Americans, and of those, 95% involve young African-Americans. We can go ahead and extrapolate and go all the way back to Rodney King. The video camera caught him being beat down like that, but if you talk to the citizens of South Central Los Angeles, they were like, that's an everyday occurrence, all day, every day.
Right.
and so we're seeing this nationally, you know, police shooting, you know, individuals and doing things as egregious as what happened in Louisiana. You know, that happens all day, every day. It's just in some cases now, because of the advent of the cell phone and the ease at which people are able to pick up cameras and closed circuit TV, we're starting to see that. So we saw that in all of our stories. You know, we try to embed a message. We're not saying in any of our stories, any particular party is right or wrong. We just want to raise the question. We want people to leave thinking about, wow, you know, what did I just see? What happened? Yeah, and that's what happened. So when we wrote River, it was important for us to have an African-American judge have a son, you know, who, you know, was on his, in the story, he was on his way to start his first day on the police force. And he gets pulled over by two cops driving his father's flashy car, you know, and they end up, you know, killing him. And, you know, you look at it in society, it's like a judge can't get justice when something like that takes place, you know, and that can happen at any time. And then, like I said, after that, you had all of these different events kind of happen. And so it ended up being really, really timely. So that was kind of the genesis of it. But the story, I think, will survive the test of time for many, many years to come, because it isn't a situation as much as where you see art imitating life as you really see life, you know, kind of imitating the art in that perspective. You see a lot of it happening every day, you know, all the time.
Now, let me ask you, what type of law did you practice when you were, you know, practicing law full time?
Criminal and general civil.
So did that inspire you to get involved with this film specifically, or did you just want to transition into making into the film production business and this project just happened to come along?
Yeah, we were going into that area, that sphere, but our backgrounds definitely impacted it. You know, from the dialogue that was used inside the film, the research that was done, everything. We got to look at it from a very legal, almost academic perspective when we went ahead and put it together, but did that in such a way that the audience could get it.
And, you know, that's interesting because I was looking at, after I watched it, I went on IMDb to look at the comments and I saw people saying, oh, this was such a bleak picture of the cops and so on and so forth. But I knew already that a lawyer, you know, someone who had, you know, been involved, was involved with this film. So Kevin, how did you get involved with the film?
Well, Leo showed up to my office unannounced.
Okay.
Apparently, he'd have to tell you this, but from my understanding, he was having a conversation with someone else, right? And a little backstory, I completed a very, very small, Leo likes to call them passion projects, right? I created a very small movie. It was a one-woman show. I was going to submit it to Sundance. So I guess Leo was having a conversation with someone and they were like, hey, did you meet another lawyer's making movies? I think Leo was like, what's his name? And then the guy said, Kevin Murray. Leo was like, Kevin Murray, because Leo and I went to law school together. And so next thing I know, he's at my office unannounced, saying, hey man, we got this movie we're thinking about doing, blah, blah, blah. And that was probably the summer. And I'm like, all right, yeah, whatever, dude. Yeah, you know, you sure you're making movies, Leo? Call me when, you know, something's real. He's like, nah, we are, blah, blah, blah. So he gives fast forward to, I don't know if it was December, January or something.
It was December. It was actually late November.
Okay, I know it was cold.
Yeah, it was cold. Yeah.
He calls me and says, hey, we're filming this in Louisville, Kentucky. Come out, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, Leo, yeah, whatever. So I was like, but you know, the adventurer that I am. So I fly out there and literally I go to the airport, the hotel they're at, and I see Leo and I see George Lopez in the back seat. And I'm like, what? Oh, okay. All right. So the next day I go to the set, and to be honest, I'm expecting, like I always say, like, you know, some iPhones and, you know, like one of them house lights, you know what I mean? I'm like, okay. But I get there, amazing set. Everything was right. George was there. And he's literally like, he's very free because I learned later our set was different than regular sets because we ran them like we do our offices. You know what I mean? Everything is laid back. So George is cracking jokes when he wasn't on in his scene. Tay Diggs was walking around. Like, you remember how you and I when we first connected again after all these years, that's how Tay was, you know, just real cool. We're all about the same age.
Yeah.
Way back, that was the set. And so they started filming it. I mean, and if you watch some of the fight scenes that are in the distillery, I'm literally, my head shooting like this, right? Shooting right over my head. And so I get back from that experience and I'm like, yo, I'm a movie producer. I'm like, Leo, how can I be a part of it? And he was like, there's a couple things that we need still as an executive producer done. He was like, you want to be a part of them? Check these boxes, then you're good. And so
and Kevin is being he's being real cool. That's that. Kevin was like a kid in a candy store. When he got there, when you know, like the fight scenes and everything, you know, first of all, it in recent recorded history, we shot in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but we shoot in different places to take advantage of tax credits, right. You know, to go ahead and make that happen. So Kentucky was a place that had a great credit. We went up there, we just happened to run into scheduling where we were shooting at the coldest time of the year, and this was a record low in terms of cold. So, you know, we had we shot in a distillery, like you said, in one particular set of scenes, and you know, so Kevin, you know, was like, okay, well, he was gonna, you know, get behind, you know, where some of the barrels were out of shot, but where you could see everything happening, you know. So, and I go over there, I'm like, you know, Kevin, are you okay? He's like, no, leave me alone, I'm good, you know, yeah. I'm like, Kevin, it's really cold, man, and you know, it's like, no, leave me alone, I'm good, you know, and you know, had a blast all the way through the whole process. I mean, and you know, you'd asked a question a little different, a little earlier about the difference between executive producing and producing. You know, the executive producers, yes, they do, you know, they're involved a lot with the money, but it also is about bringing things in kind. If you have relationships with people, they can go ahead and get you things that you need to go ahead and get your film, you know, made. And anybody who knows Kevin Murray, you know, Kevin picks up the phone and, you know, hey, you need this, 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 and this. He's like, okay, if he can't get it, he doesn't believe that if he can't give it to you directly by himself, he doesn't believe that there's a way that he can't get it, and he'll make it happen. So that's what your EPs do. When we produce, we're the ones who are on the ground, making sure that, you know, and like, you know, there's not, like he said, we're laid back. We're not quote unquote Hollywood. Right. You could have a runner go and pick up George Lopez. No, I'm going to go pick up George. We're going to make sure that, you know, they're taken care of, make sure people are, you know, things are done right, you know, when you oversee that, you know, and it goes a long way, you know, when it comes to treating people, because they remember that, you know. Right. George Lopez actually was incredibly busy, and the director actually wrote him a letter and, you know, asked him to be a part of the project, and, you know, asked him to look at the script. George read the script and hopped on a plane coming to do the movie. He told his agent to negotiate with me all the stuff while it was coming, because when he was 18, one of his friends was coming out of a convenience store. He said the police officers just pulled up, didn't even get out of the car, right? You know, he was walking with, he had a drink in his hand or maybe a hot dog or something. And they just kind of yelled, freeze. And he just kind of stuck, and they shot him and killed him. So he killed one of his best friends, you know, when he was 18 years old. And so this hit home for him because it was a story that he could identify with. So he was like, I don't care what's happening. I'm getting ready to go do this movie, you know? And so we tied everything up, and he came and brought, as you saw, a stellar performance.
Definitely.
Wow.
Definitely. That might have been his only dramatic performance that I've seen.
He's done a few more since then, actually. But yeah, that was one of the first ones that he started to do a lot more of the dramatic stuff coming out of the comedy. And his timing is perfect. I mean, you know, this is a guy who's done TV. He's had his own talk show. He's done movies, but, you know, he's moving into dramatic field, but he's fantastic in doing it. I mean, he hits it, you know, he's just there. He's that guy. Okay.
And in the time we have left, because I tell my guests all the time on here, I like to shamelessly plug my guests, whatever you got going on. You know, you don't you don't have to question. They be like, Dave, is it all right if we talk about this? I'm like, definitely. You know, we got to lift each other up. So, what are some other upcoming projects that you have coming up?
Well, we have a project that's going to be, we're delivering it. It was initially supposed to be released in January. They moved it back to February, but we have a movie with Bruce Willis coming out in February called A Day to Die, starring Bruce Willis, Kevin Dillon, Leon. Everybody remembers Leon from the Five Heartbeats. Right.
Frank Grillo's in there, right?
Frank Grillo's also in that one, you know, and it's a bank heist movie. You have a situation where you have an individual that had to go ahead and go and get some money because of something that he had done to make amends. And you know, I don't want to give it away, but it's coming out. We'll have that out, you know, in February.
Yeah, I like to say it has a lot of action. Like, you remember Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro? Remember all the fight scenes, the explosions, the gunplay, all of that? I'd say it's akin to that. It's got a little more twists and turns, but think of that type of action. And Leo also, he and I also made a movie called Hell on the Border. And that was a story of Bass Reeves. So I didn't even know about Bass Reeves until Leo came to me. Leo came to me and was like, you know, it's the story of the Lone Ranger.
Lone Ranger.
And he was like, you know, the real Lone Ranger was Bass Reeves. I'm like, no, the real Lone Ranger, what are you talking about? I've never heard that story. The real Lone Ranger, you know, former slave, illiterate, cannot read or write, captured and killed over 5,000 men in the Arkansas and Oklahoma territories. We did that Western. And for me, it was just eye-opening. I had never heard that story. You know, as a kid, you see the Lone Ranger, white man, black mask, but they understood that they couldn't tell the story. You know, America, they thought, was not ready for that story whenever in the 40s, 50s, 60s, whenever the Lone Ranger fictional character was on. I guess it started on radio, then it moved to TV.
Right.
So, but the real one, the guy who was the motivating factor for it was Bass Reeves. And we did a movie about him.
And where can we find Hell on the Border?
Hell on the Border is, you can download it on iTunes, Apple iTunes. It is also on Amazon. And now I believe they got the most recent license for it, and should be on Netflix in the first quarter of 2022.
Oh, nice.
Good, nice. Dr. Holmes, I'm sure you probably already knew the story of Bass Reeves. When did you first?
I didn't know the story of Bass Reeves.
You didn't?
No.
Right.
But I don't. I had a question. You know, how do you take? What's the process in this whole production piece from an idea to a finished product? What's involved? You mentioned some of it, Leo. What's involved from just the idea generation to the end product?
Well, everything begins and ends with the script. You know, once you get the script, you know, and it's not necessarily a shooting script, just a script. It starts from there. Anything that you see on TV and the movies, that script has probably been rewritten on average about 14 times from its birth to when you saw it as you're watching it. But everything begins with the script. Once we get the script, then we'll go and break it down. We'll look at, okay, based on this script, how long is it going to take to shoot? You know, how long do we need individual characters? What type of settings do we need? Is it going to be where we could build our own sets, or do we go out and find something natural and we go ahead and we do that? Once we do that, then we'll sit and evaluate it. Basically, we look at, okay, this is what it's going to cost to shoot it outside of the actors. Go ahead and get that, and then we go ahead and we develop a list of, you know, the actors that we want to go ahead and work with that bring value to the film. Then I call Kevin and say, Kevin, I need some money, and so no, but then you
do my best. I see what I can do. See what I can do.
So yeah, then you get with your EPs and you guys start talking about, you know, financing and the intricacies of that. What we also try to do is we look to see what kind of audience it would appeal to, looking to see what kind of distribution we possibly could get. I mean, people don't realize how pertinent Berry Gordy was in the way he did things with music back in the day, and you know how he tested things. People, that whole process, it repeats itself, and we do the same type of thing till now. We're like, okay, if we tell this Bass Reeves story, is anybody going to be interested? You know, yes, stories are driven, and people, every story somebody wants to go and watch it, but will it be such that it makes commercial sense? So we kind of go and go through that process. Then we pick a date, a tentative date. That's another thing you have to do is, you know, if you sit up and if it remains like I'm going to make this movie and you don't say, okay, I'm going to shoot it September of 2022, even if that date doesn't happen, it will never take place. If it just is a concept and you're like, okay, we'll do it one of these days, it'll never happen. So then we pick a date and we start working towards making it happen.
Yeah, and Leo's been a little modest himself on this one, because what happens is the way we make movies, if we were to ask any of the agents, any of the players in Hollywood, or any across the country, can you make a movie like this? To a person, they would say, no, you can't do it. So my thought is, from my perspective, the biggest thing that we do is we don't ask for permission. If necessary, we may ask for forgiveness if we hurt somebody's feelings, but we never ask for permission. We just go out and do it and have that mindset. And I'll say, I can only tell you where I received my entrepreneurial spirit from, and that has to do with, law school, and then the fact that just Leah and I went to Thurgood School of Law. Andrea went to undergrad at Texas Southern, all the same school. And I don't know if it's by mistake or by design, but the fact that you have to go get this knowledge and go get this education, it's not spoon-fed to you. It makes you believe first that there's nothing you can't do. There's just some things you haven't done yet, but there's nothing you can't do. Secondly, information is out there. Go find it, go get it. Like I said, don't ask for permission. If necessary, ask for forgiveness if you do something wrong, but just go out and get it. You know what I mean? And that's the mindset that ultimately that I know that has helped me figure out, all these, because I'm a land developer, a builder. I build townhomes. You know what I mean? I had no idea what I was doing. I just wanted to do it. You know what I mean? My son, he just graduated degree in civil engineering. I figured there's something where we can bond. You know what I mean? Right. He was like, I got a job at Turner Construction, dude. Your project's too small for me. I was like, all right, great. But my point is, just go do it. You know what I mean? And if you make some mistakes, if it costs you some money, I've never had education since I left high school I didn't pay for. You know what I mean? So just go learn, go get it.
And I think
David, you had asked that question earlier, like, was this something that we moved into because of the money? And, while in every field, you're going to have people who do exceptionally well, make a lot of money, and some who won't. Just because you see film being made and people producing film, it's not something that, automatically, I made a film, I made a whole lot of money. Right. As a matter of fact, you have this constant struggle with making sure you're able to make film, get it done, get it out there, make a living, and then be able to do it again. Because if not, what it ends up becoming is a very expensive hobby. So, and then you have stories of, to be told. And like Kevin said, he's absolutely correct. If you go ahead and knock on doors, hey, I got a script, I want to go ahead and make this. And people are like, I don't really see it, this and that, and, you'll get 1,000 no's before you get that one yes. And so, what our kind of motto is we're our own yes. What do I need to do to go ahead and make this up? Like Kevin said, we came out of law school. We didn't go to film school. I didn't be on the film business side, but, you grab the books. One thing that we got with our legal training was it gave you the foundation and basis to go and, okay, I can go teach myself how to do this. And we took myself and like some of my production partners also, he's a former lawyer. We took about 3 years just edifying ourselves. He teaching himself how to write and myself teaching, okay, what do we need to do on the business side? How do I raise money? What is a tax credit? How is it that I can, give my film value? What is a bankable star? You learn all these things and, you're able to go ahead and get a product and put it out there. And you just hope that you're growing and doing bigger and bigger things from there on.
And I think that's the beauty of the era that we're living in now. We've kind of eliminated all the gatekeepers. I used to host a television show in Philly for like 5 years, just a small public access show. And then, in recent years, I reached out to Dr. Holmes and Andre Taylor, and I said, I wanted to put something together. I didn't have to, necessarily go to a TV producer who probably would have turned me down, like David Roberts, who are you, But, I had something I wanted to say. So, I had this opportunity to say it and bring guests on, and whoever watches it, some of our things get more views than others, but we didn't have to, rely on a gatekeeper. And I think it's great that you guys can do what you do and not have to rely on a gatekeeper. Even some of these, young rappers, I'm not crazy about the music now, but, they put their stuff on YouTube and, they get an audience. And especially with that, I think it's great because now you don't have corporations distorting your message, which I think happened in hip hop, but that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother discussion.
Absolutely.
I think, Leo, to your point, it's about creating your own lane. And like you said, and we are coming from a generation that is self-taught. and we can pivot, unlike our parents who said, no, you work here and you stay at this career for 45 years because that's a good job. It's got the good benefits. We throw caution to the wind and we're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go and try this. No, I don't have any training, but you're going to surround yourself with the people, the access, the resources to make it happen. My degree is in psychology. My background is in pharmaceutical sales, medical device sales, and marketing. And then here, after launching a firm with my sister, who is my business partner, 4 years ago, I found myself in one of the biggest trials that will go down in history. And, same like you guys, I just continue to hone my craft and learn and connect myself with people who have been there before me to make myself better.
And
And we shot Hell in the Border in Alabama. And I remember specifically one night we were shooting late over in we had a night shoot. And I literally turned to Kevin and I'm like, we're a bunch of Black guys making a Western, like with real horses, and that was it. I mean, it was real horses. We had, everything set up to go ahead and do that. And it's like, wow, you had to stop and just for a second, kind of taking it back and take a breath. But, we did it. So, to your point, you got with your sister and now, you look at the size of the trial that you guys went ahead and took a bite out of, that's something that's huge. And nobody directed you in that path. Like you decided this is where you wanted to go. And so, yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah. And another irony of that shoot in Alabama of Hell on the Border, we shot it on a old Confederate armory.
Wow.
Like all the people making decisions look like us. And we shot it on an old Confederate armory.
Well, Andrea, I wanted to close out with you, because, we found out the projects that Leo and Kevin have coming up. And we put everything, we put all our references in the links, when we post the video, but just for the people watching, if someone wasn't interested in your services, how could they reach out to you?
They can go to our website, which is theodomgroup.com, or you can shoot me an email at Andrea@theodomgroup. We have clients all over the country in diversity and inclusion management, project strategy, as well as PR, marketing, and branding. So however we can assist. What the funny thing they say about consultants is we're always going to say yes, and then we're going to go figure it out. Just like you guys, though.
Like lawyers too.
Okay, who can I finance it? I'm going to call Kevin. Kevin, you know somebody in this area? You just keep calling people until somebody tells you yes. I don't really take no for an answer. Kevin knows that very well about me. We've worked on a lot of different things.
Absolutely.
I'm a figure outer. I'm going to go figure it out. I'm going to make it happen.
All right.
Yep.
Well, I'm sorry. Was somebody trying to say something? One last thing? Okay, never mind. Well, Kevin, you obviously, everyone's saying that, you know how to make things happen. And I can attest to that too. You made this happen, man. I wanted you, and you got me two other great, dynamic guests, man. So I just want to thank you for putting this together. Leo, Andrea, I want to thank you both for being on. Much continued success. And Leo, Kevin, when this new film is coming out, I want you to come on and promote this for us.
Absolutely.
Sure will. We absolutely
And David, it's always like I bring them because together we go further.
And that's truly what Kevin does. I'm telling you, Kevin is the kind of person who will take an opportunity and does not try to keep anything to himself. And I think that's when we as a people are most successful, is putting each other on and connecting each other to opportunities. And there's enough success for everybody to go around. And when you surround yourself with all those people, we are all going to win.
Definitely. On that point, again, I want to thank you all, and I hope to have you back soon. All right, take care, everybody.
Lord, yes, papi, hit me one time and make it funky.
I was brought up and told to have no fear.